topics and opinions expressed in the following show are solely those of the host and their guests and not those of W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio or its employees or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
Good evening, and welcome to another fabulous show. Fabulous opportunity to enhance your knowledge, to get to hear something you normally don't hear, and to participate. Welcome to another segment with Setting It Straight with Miss Gray. Thank you so much. And her fabulous co-hosts, of course. We are continuing with acknowledging and identifying and being aware of national limb loss and limb difference. We have a guest tonight, but before I go any further, let's take it to the throne room in prayer. Lord, we just thank you today. We praise you. We give you glory. You alone are worthy to be praised. We just thank you for this opportunity. Now, this is your voice. We're your children. We're your people. We're going to get behind the cross and let you do what you do best, and that's set your captives free. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen and amen. Well, thank you. Trey, how's the weather up there? I know you're enjoying yourself. I know
yes,
you're
but it got
enjoying your... Huh?
Yes, but it got cooler this week. It was 80s, 90s last week, and I think we're 50s this week.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, it's okay. It's okay because May is right around the corner now. Now, if we're going into the 60s in May, we got a problem. The ice is melting somewhere, and we're in troubles. Amen and amen. Roll call. Where's the audience? All right, audience, we need y'all checking in tonight. Okay, be safe while you do it, but we need everybody checking in the name of Jesus. So roll call, let's show, because we've got a guest tonight, and a fabulous guest at that. So I want to see who's on the horn, who's listening in. Before we bring her in, I want to give a shout out to our funders, our donors, who I know I mentioned a few last week. I was waiting on a few more donations came in. But my ABC prosthetic company here in Orlando, my foot surgeon, Dr. Luttrell, Healing Soul Podiatry, and that's the guest member that's going to be on tonight. Who else? Miss Carolyn out the northern area of Florida here, a colleague of mine and good friend. One of my spiritual daughters donated. My twins donated, so I'm giving y'all a shout out. Thank you so much, Miss K, and to your twin, Mr. K. I was surprised at those, and even one of the guests that showed up, that attended, also gave a financial donation, which she didn't have to. And of course, Tennessee came through. I'm not leaving them out. Got their donation. It was very sweet, very well needed. So I thank you. And of course, I've sent out a fabulous shout out to IHOP restaurant here in the Orlando area, to Mr. Ron, who is the manager over there. He's just great. And as his words are, your family, so anything you need me to do, we will step up and we do it. So they did. And our newest partners is the Salvation Army, the men's shelter in particular. I hope I did not leave anybody out. I don't think. Desire for All Nations, Pastor Lydia here also gave a donation. So we're just thankful for that. And thank you all. I just say, hey, hey, Mickey, how you doing? Okay, we're here. We're here. Okay, if that's the crew there. Gotcha. Well, good. I'm not going to belabor the time. anymore, because I want Miss Horn to really enlighten us with her knowledge and everything. And I'm going to let her introduce what she do and introduce herself. So without further ado, let's give a round of applause for Miss Horn. Come on.
Hello, hello, everybody. Yes, thank you so much for the warm introduction. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
So, Miss Gray, invited me onto the show, talk a little bit about, my experience that is in the day-to-day setting that I do now as my career. But I'll give you a little bit of a background and how I got to that point, right? So I actually started out at Valencia College. For anybody who is looking to put their kid in a four-year college here locally, highly recommend it. I saved so much money. I had very small classroom experience, which I think really did help bolster my knowledge, right? Especially with these core classes that led into me getting to UCF as a biology major. I did graduate with honors, and I think it was around the last year or two that I was there that I actually went back with Dr. Luttrell, who was my father's podiatrist at the time, and spoke with him and said, hey, I've been trying to get in anywhere to just get shadowing hours, to try to get my foot in the door. All these hours are required. He said, come on in. We'd love to have you, right? Lovely family, of course, I know now, great crew, very accepting, very wonderful. Learned under him. And I have been with Healing Souls Podiatry now since, I guess that would be 2018, which is kind of crazy to think about. Did take a 2-year hiatus for, Miss Gray knows some family problems that had kind of needed my full attention, but very happy to be back. And, the knowledge that was given to me obviously is still very strong in my heart. I'm very passionate about patient care and longevity and, going further than, I guess you would say, clinical care. We really do care about every single patient that comes through that door. I specifically love research. So even one of my closest friends that I used to work with at the Valencia College Biolab, because that is also in my resume history, if you will. I did work at the bioprep lab at Valencia College too, which kind of helped with some of this research and clinical coming together. But yes, I'm very passionate about research as well and bringing some new topics to the table sometimes of, sometimes we can get discouraged and think that there's no options, or you've been turned down by so many other physicians who have said, here's your one option and there's nothing else that you can even try. And I love that Dr. Luttrell looks at different scopes. I think him and I align very well with that. And unfortunately, we do deal with, I think, some of these topics at hand, which we'd spoken about amputations and vascular disease and diabetes, trauma, different things like that. And I think Miss Gray and I have had a lot of conversations. I've had many conversations with other patients as well about, the physical aspect of it, of course, yes, but the mental and the spiritual side too. So yeah, I think that's what brings me here today.
Amen. And I love Miss Horn because, the whole staff is just so open and receptive, and they move along with, they recently saw me have a moment where I just kind of broke down, just couldn't take, this health stuff and going to get the blood work and going to do this and going to do that. And it really, I've never have gotten overwhelmed in my personal life since I've been in the hospital and over these past 7 years of going through what I went through. But I'm telling you, it's good to be able to, be relaxed. There's no judgment there. They accept me as is. And like I said, he's one of my Healing Souls is one of my leading sponsors. And the staff is there. We've had a luncheon there and everything else, and they're open for everything. And I'm glad Miss Horn made it back because she was missing. And there's a difference there, and everything. And she comes in and she meets with the patients first sometimes, and she's getting more of a history. And everybody there knows your history. All the staff knows your history. They know you. No judgment is best. Hey, Charles, coming in from Washington. Hey, thank you. They're going to be everybody. It welcomes people. It does, Charles, and it keeps you there. It keeps you going back. It keeps you feeling, okay, this is truly a safe space. So whatever and we can talk about everything. We can talk about anything. So, I'm this, it makes a difference. But I'm glad you touched on one thing, and I want to start opening that up. You finally people are identifying that once you're starting on that road of limb loss, that you're going to possibly lose a limb. You're going to be amputated. The front part of that, most people think is diabetes automatically. And part of my story is, and I think I listed it in the book, that, my Dr. Luttrell, my surgeon said, they wheeled me in. I already had the amputations of my fingers and my hand. And so everybody's like, oh, what happened to her? And he's like, he's trying to think like, how do I, and then he had to finally quiet the area, said, just, give me a minute. I got to sit here because I don't want her to have to limp. I don't want her limping. And I tear up every time I recant that story, because that's who I'm talking about with this organization, with this doctor's office. He was like, no, everybody, I need y'all to be quiet because I got to think. And he's like, okay. And he proceeded on. And so I know my angels are in the room with him as well. And he's just one of a kind. And I look at, but going back to that, it's not only just diabetes. We now have sepsis is coming up and reoccurring now. It's becoming just almost as frequent as you hear diabetes being the cause. Then we've got people with the smoking and alcoholism and having a cardiovascular. But the newest category that people, and I call it, is not really new. It's been there since we've been since the world of amputation, but nobody's talked about it because you're already making a judgment. You're already assuming that you know how we got to here. But there's the trauma. And lately I've been training with gentlemen and mainly some men who, what is that sepsis? Okay, Anastasia, I'll circle back in a minute, or either Ms. Horn could also help us with that. But let me say this part, and then Ms. Horn, I want you to jump on in. Trauma. There's 2 young men that were hit on their bikes when they were 15. They're now in their 30s and 40s. And their limbs had to be amputated, or their limb had to be amputated. That's a trauma. That was no diabetes. That was no sepsis. That was not, they were smokers. None of that. They got hit by a car at 15. And now here it is. They are now an amputee. There was one that had an accident on the job with a meat grinder. Things happen. I remember my dad, we got the call. He used to build houses, and we had to go to the emergency room because there was an accident. They didn't tell us. And we get there, my dad's, he's bleeding. He's got a gauze on it, but it was this finger here that, because the saw, it ricocheted and cut his finger. So now I'm just now getting a revelation. My dad became an amputee. I didn't even think about that. Oh my God. Because I'm having a picture of him. So so there's the medical pieces. There's the genealogy. If you've got diabetes in the family, you just can't take that lightly. You can't, and then childhood diabetes. And I know you all don't see children, but that's another big issue that people are not thinking about. This is serious. And that child could eventually lose a limb at some point in their life. So, Ms. Horn, I know I've said a lot, but yeah, from the beautiful set of folks, patients that you all have, I know we all have a story. Our stories, even if you've got 2 diabetics and you got 3 cardiovascular, you got 1 sepsis, we all have a story of how we got to this.
Yeah, definitely.
So definitely. Just share, just whatever's on your heart, whatever you think the audience, right now. I'm sorry, Trey.
Can I ask a question to Ms. Horn? Just one second. I just thought of. So what about if someone has like a bite, an insect bite or animal bite, and allergic? Could that result in an amputee?
Definitely. So it kind of runs along that same side of sepsis, right? So sepsis can happen from either a wound that has become so poorly infected that it has now entered the bloodstream. And the biggest problem is, if we are concerned that it can enter the bloodstream, it is safer to amputate the digit, the limb, than to allow potentially the whole body to shut down. There is also the side of sepsis where you are experiencing such a severe infection that unfortunately they have to basically put your body to sleep, put you into an induced coma. In worst case scenarios, they will give you something called vasopressors that basically constrict all the vessels in the most small, furthest vessels, which are typically in the hands, the feet, the limbs, to keep the core alive. And when that happens, it does result in limb loss, and it happens more often than you would think. And I will say as well that I unfortunately was guilty as well with Miss Gray. I look in her chart and I go through every patient's chart and I see non-diabetic. I'm like, this has to be a mistake. Everyone has hard days. She just didn't want to fill out this part of the paperwork. And I go check with the doctor, and he says, no, and mind you, this is earlier, very early in my time as well, still with Dr. Luttrell. And he's like, no. And we went through the case and I was like, oh my word, I had just never heard of an experience like that yet. Right. Later, now we have experience to her point. I had a patient just the other day that unfortunately did have a traumatic loss of their big toe just from something falling at their work, and it completely amputated the digit. So traumatic loss is absolutely something that I have seen more and more in the years that I've worked there as well. Car accidents as well is something to consider, because unfortunately there's times where, I don't want to be too graphic on here, but nothing's disconnected, but everything is so shattered on the inside that it's irreparable. And the only option, unfortunately, is to proceed with amputation. So I do think there are so many more cases beside just the cardiovascular disease and the diabetes. I do think, unfortunately, it is still a predominant leading factor. I think there's a lot of new medications on the market to help diabetes and their especially with patients and the lifestyle changes, right? A lot of it's very difficult, and, medicines that can aid in that, even if it's just a crutch for a short period of time, some of the things that they've come out with has been very helpful. So, I hope that in future studies, we're going to see a decrease in that. You've seen that the newer generations are smoking less and things like that. So same things, we all have hopes that those statistics will continue to decrease, right? But
yeah. And two things I got out of that was I'm wondering what vaping is going to show us.
yeah,
I wonder what vaping is going to, because that's a different animal there, and the different dependency and everything else. So I'm giving it a few more years. We may start seeing and hearing, a whole new batch of research, on that and everything. I was very blessed. Vasopressors were what I was administered to while I was in surgery. And yeah, that there you go. And it's sad that while we have snake venom antidotes, we don't have an antidote for something like that takes the blood, like you said, but it don't put it back.
right.
There's no medication to put it back. And so that's my story. So and that one thing I've shared with you all over the years, that one of the receptionists in the early years I was there, she at Halloween time she had 2 bags of candy. One was for everybody else, and one bag was for me. And she put my name on it. She said, "Because Miss Gray is not a diabetic."
Yeah, no, exactly.
Remember
because
that?
usually we have the sugar-free candies, and I will
Yes.
say that, like, if we are talking about wound care, amputation, limb loss, etc., it is a vast majority of our patients that are diabetic. Some I will also mention as well that can kind of be forgotten is, unfortunately, cancer treatments such as radiation. There are secondary effects that cause lesions on the skin, especially the feet. So we definitely had patients as well that had no vascular disease, no diabetes, no trauma, because I do consider radiation trauma. But they did have massive ulcers to the feet. And unfortunately, just like in type 1 diabetes being an autoimmune disease and unfortunately causing, your immune system to be lowered in general, with the cancer treatments as well, your immune system's lowered. So everything heals slower. Everything is more difficult. And that can also lead to limb loss when we talk about sepsis. God forbid this open area that we're trying to heal for sometimes years at a time, and I'm not exaggerating, does not get healed. It gets infected. We're just playing a game waiting to get a bone infection. And, that's our goal really weekly with those type of patients, is to mitigate infection, try to keep it healing, make sure they can still keep up with their treatments, and hopefully at some point in time be able to really tackle this and totally heal the wound up.
Is there a way to save a limb before having to remove it? There you go.
So I actually love that question, because I like to say we are in the game of saving limbs, I have several patients that will come into the office that were greeted by a more brash person, let's say in the ER, who is a general doctor and says, "Oh, well, you're just going to have this amputated," whatever that may be. It may be a toe, maybe a leg. And they say it nonchalant like that, like it's not life-changing, like it's their only option. And thankfully, I always get sad thinking about the percentage who do not, but thankfully, a lot of these patients will advocate for themselves to have a second opinion. And anybody listening, I would always advocate for that. Just like if you have a construction worker come to your home, you should have 3 quotes, right? You should definitely advocate for a second opinion, especially if you don't feel like your questions are, properly being answered. But we've had several patients who have come to us, and maybe it does take several months, maybe even years, but we absolutely can save a lot of the limbs. Unfortunately, it just comes down to how repairable the damage is. Bone infections are very difficult. We can always try IV treatment of antibiotics. Sometimes it works, sometimes it does not. And, you know, we always just pray that it does, of course. But yeah, there's definitely different options. Other options at different times. Yeah. So depending on the stage that you are in, of course, as well. So she spoke of different things that are happening here. So if we're talking about a vascular disease, unfortunately, that is the most common one that will inevitably lead to an amputation. And why is that? So vascular diseases are literally depriving the furthest parts of your body, so your toes, your fingers, of the oxygen that it needs to be able to keep those cells happy and alive, right? Over time, the cells will just die off. The tissue will start to die off. And at that point, it does hit where there's no coming back. The tissue will not rejuvenate once the cells are fully dead. So unfortunately, you do kind of weigh the odds of moving forward with an amputation. And in these worst cases, not moving forward with an amputation, because your best option would be what's called an AKA, which is above knee amputation, where you're all the way up at the thigh. And that's just because that's where their nearest good blood flow is, right? So if we, let's say, unfortunately have to amputate a limb, and we start to do Dopplers and see that their blood flow, you know, we only needed to amputate the dead toes, but their blood flow starts well below the knee, we have to do a below knee amputation instead of a TMA, which is considered a transmetatarsal amputation, meaning you would take all the toes off and leave that portion of it. So it really does depend on the scenario. Vascular is the one that I would say, unfortunately, is the most bleak as far as if it comes in a very dire state, there's usually not a lot that we can do. But there's a lot that we can try to do preventatively before it hits that point. Yeah.
And having conversations like this in the schools, we need to, you know, we need folks going in to talk for the prevention, because we've been so far away from prevention since I'm going to say since almost since 9/11 and even 2020. You know, because we don't talk about how to prevent something. We're trying to, you know, put the fire out in crisis mode, and not even early intervention. But Trey, you remember Trey was from I met her in my hometown many years ago, and she did domestic violence work. Remember, we always talked about the prevention side of things. We had grants out there that were for prevention only. That's pamphlets, talking to people, educating people, you know, almost scaring you to death with the stats to let you know. So no, if you see now y'all, if you see something, say something. No, you should have did that 50 years ago. We talked about that 70 years ago. We're not that old though. But anyway, you know, I mean, so we're not even, that's what has concerned me about my field of social work, and even in the medical field, that we can't even talk about prevention anymore, because we're already way over here. We're in intervention and crisis, not even early intervention. So having conversations like this, having our younger people hear this, having the parents to have a conversation and say, you know what, that there's diabetic, we have diabetes in the family, or we have high blood pressure in the family. One of the gentlemen that I was in the training with, he stepped on a nail. He's a police officer. He was fine, no health issues. He stepped on a nail which went through his steel-toed boot, and the foot got infected. The toes got infected immediately. You know, just even a frostbite, when people go up north and they're climbing mountains and stuff like that, and they're not warm enough and stuff like that, the frostbite, you know, you got to have this conversation. And I want you, you know, we want you to just understand. And the body, now this is going to get you. The body was created to heal itself. It was created to heal itself if you do it right. But you got to tell your body, you got to line up. You know, you're supposed to heal this wound. I remember being a discharge planner at the hospital, and I told you, I shared the story all the time. There was a slightly very obese plus size woman who her kids had set her in a lazy boy chair in front of her bathroom, and she would have to get up and try to hobble because she was very overweight. So she breaks the femur. She breaks her femur. Well, we can't. There's no bone. Getting the bone back together, you know, and Medicare says, well, no, she's on observation because there's nothing else the hospital could do. It had to heal itself, a bone healing itself. So I want people to understand that no matter when you go to the doctor and you're hearing the diagnosis, you're getting the lab results. Okay, listen for those results, because that's how you formulate your prayer. Lord, right now I bind inoperable diabetes. Let it go no further. And whatever medications I'm prescribed, I don't want to be on it long, but let it hit where it needs to hit so I can be better. And learning and educating yourself. So I'm glad we got some young folks also listening in, because you got to, I know the French fries, I know the chicken nuggets. McDonald's is not sustaining food anymore. It's not good stuff going in it anymore. It never really kind of was. Y'all need to tell your parents to get a small little grill from Walmart. Y'all cook the burgers, grill the burgers and hot dogs in the backyard. Okay? Do it yourself. And not, going to these places and getting this. I know fast food is just that. It's fast food. But over time, and I'm just going to be really, just really transparent. I was very healthy, meaning with this great treatment team I've got here, my medical team, very healthy going along. But then I'm like, oh, well, I could just have a little Pepsi. It won't hurt. And a little Pepsi got to a 6-pack and an 8-pack. And I wouldn't drink them every day, but then I had my sweet tea. And slowly but surely, all of a sudden the lab results came back and said, Miss Gray, you no longer borderline diabetic. You're diabetic. And I'm like, what? No, I can't be. Yeah. Then I had to put this gooky device on my arm that reads my sugar level and report it every day. And everything except for water, it's got little sugar in it. And my numbers are all over the place. And I'm like, oh, no, I can't go back in the hospital. But I was self-sabotaging is what I'm going to go hard on myself. I'm not saying other people would do this, but yeah, I know better. And I'm not out of the woods because now I'm already free. This opened up that door. Michaela, Ms. Horn, am I saying it right? I'm lining myself up.
No, I definitely think what you're saying is true. And unfortunately, when we talk about limb loss, and we've had this conversation of the mental aspect of it, we are reaching for comfort that we have lost, right? And I do think that many people do that. And one of the cases that I see the most is, the way my grandfather used to say, burying your head in bed, meaning you go to bed and that is just your comfort place. You find that you don't really want to do the PT and you're really not wanting to cook at home. You're really not wanting to try new things. And I'll be honest, I can think of maybe one patient. He's actually a double amputee. He got them both at the same time. He got fitted for both legs. He jumped up and was ready to walk. He is somebody that was just driven from day one and was like, well, there's no other option, so I'm just going to do it. But he was a rare species, if you will, right? Like that is not the commonality. The commonality is to be terrified, knowing my whole body could die, could shut down. And yet I need a day or two to think about maybe if I need to amputate this limb, right? And this is coming from a team that they trust, someone like us that potentially has tried to mitigate that problem for whatever given amount of time. So, it's not that they're not trusting it. It's that their brain is going, is this for real? I really have to mentally disconnect with this as well. So I do think to your point of a diet Pepsi or a French fry even, right? A drive-through, whatever. It's that little bit of, I deserve a little convenience, right? Have I not been inconvenienced enough? And I think it is an easy trap to fall into because it does kind of start to fall down that line of like, pity me. And well, maybe I should just stay in bed today. And my PT doesn't know everything I'm going through and it is too hard today and I'm just not going to do it. Instead of telling your brain, hey, hush, you're going to feel better if we just shut that off, if we quiet the noise a little bit, if we go back to our prayer, if we go back to our PT and we put in the effort, and maybe we can't do all 10 exercises, right? And I tell my patients this all the time. I was like, but if you did 3, it was better than the 0 you were first willing to do, right? Like actually push to find what your boundaries are. Same thing with you talk about diabetes and changing foods. And I have so many of my patients that unfortunately have never even had a good talk with their doctor. And that's another thing I would play off to your point is ask questions to your doctor. Many doctors, unfortunately, are going to sit down and give you some crazy diagnosis like diabetes, right? And think, oh, this is so generalized. You're a diabetic. Here's the info. Here's your packet. You're going to get a pamphlet. Pick this up at your pharmacy. they don't know anything about the dietary changes. They don't know about counting their carbs. They don't know how carbs, simple sugars versus complex sugars, affect their blood sugar spikes versus longevity of holding blood sugars. And what I always, and unfortunately, those are the patients that come to me frustrated. They're ticked off with the medical industry. They feel super confused because their sugars are all over the place. They don't know what they're doing wrong. And what I always tell them is, don't be discouraged. Everybody has been at that point before. If any doctors ever made you feel belittled, ever made you feel like, well, you should just know this, then they're rude, right? They're not respectfully, their bedside manner isn't good. And I used to joke, then those people should be in research, right? Because you're smart. Yeah. You obviously are, you got somewhere, but maybe you're not a people person, and that's okay. But yeah, I definitely think it's something where maybe you have to spend a day, maybe you get down with family, maybe you do some Googling and you come up with some questions where, respectfully, you hold that doctor's foot to the flame. They're billing you for it. I promise you they are. That full hour, they answered all questions patient asked, whatever in their soap note. I would say ask them, ask all the questions. And if you don't feel satisfied with that, get a second opinion. And I know people hate the thought of starting over, but I would definitely do that.
To push a little bit more each time to get further. Well, yeah, Misty, you got to ask the questions now. You have to watch how you eat, make some changes. Yes, Mickey, you got to ask the questions. A good professor, a good teacher in your lifetime will say, do anybody have any questions? I just gave you a whole lot of information tonight. You've taken notes and everything. Anybody got any questions? Because we got a quiz coming up, or you got we got the midterms coming up. Any questions? And I used to tell my students, don't leave me confused. Don't leave me because don't ask me the night of the quiz, because I'm gonna give you a pop quiz. I got to make sure you're with me and that you understand the material, not just that you could define something. I need you to understand it. So no, I want to know. So when I go in and have my blood work read with my primary, and she's an ARN, she's very good. She goes through, she don't just run it and look at the numbers and then she comes back with the lecture. No. She goes, okay, Miss Gray, here we go. And I got my copy too, and I'm going right along with it. And she's going line by line. Okay, this is good. Your numbers are improving. This is good. So I see you doing this. I see you doing that. By the numbers will give you up.
Yeah.
The numbers will give you, they will tell it all. Go ahead, Trey. You want to say something?
Yeah, I was just having and Michaela, I know you're in the medical field. So one of the things that I learned about being a caregiver, sometimes the person that you're caring with, like I was caregiver, might not know what to ask.
Correct. Or, 100%.
He was older. So some of the things he might not have picked up on, whereas when I went with him or my sisters went with him, we would ask those particular questions that he might not think of. The one thing too, a lot of people are intimidated by going to the doctor, but I have some people in my corner that if I'm afraid to go, will go and assist me in there and will go in to help advocate. Because sometimes you miss things in a bit of nervousness and anxiety and anxiousness.
Or medical conditions. There are certain medical conditions as well where people are legitimately not able to advocate for themselves, whether that is unable to speak physically, literally, does happen. Unfortunately, we've had that happen in our world. Or if they have memory care issues, they don't even know if something was missed, what the doctor said. I have one patient who will call his wife every time he's in there. That way she can hear everything that we discussed and there's no question, nobody's missing any information. So I completely agree with that. Definitely. There's something to be said about the fear of advocation and the just not knowingness of it. I'll be honest, for myself, if I have a patient that I can tell is a little timid, I've actually had a conversation recently with a vascular patient, and he expressed to me his concerns and he expressed to me all the questions he had. And I said, you should write those down right now. And if it makes you feel better, tell them your podiatrist wanted to know this. When we were talking with the podiatry in conversation, I'm always happy to be that advocate to take the fall. I've already told them as well, if you ever just need somebody in your corner to answer questions, you want someone to, help you with any of the insurance stuff, right? Our front desk lady is wonderful with that. Any questions with wound care, they'll text me if there's a voicemail, right? And we do try to bridge that gap, but I agree with you. Unless you are reaching out to social work, which I always recommend as well. Insurance companies a lot of times will cover social work. There's definitely wonderful options to try to bridge that gap.
Yeah, you could do that, Mickey. You could say, hey, do you mind me? I want to record the questions. I'm asking this, and we'll just cut it off afterwards, but I just have 5 questions I need to ask. And you have that right and you have that time in there as well. you need to do that and advocate. It's nothing like advocacy for yourself. I think that was the biggest thing that really held me together on a daily while I was in the hospital. I told them what I needed. This is what I needed: a discharge planner with a social work background. That is, only he or she will understand what I'm about to ask her to do. And I had three major things, and she was right on it. Even reached out and stepped out a little further because she got to know our family dynamic and what my needs were. So yeah, you could ask the questions, and if they don't want to, if they want to give you a brush off, then they're not the folks for you. And I can tell you that. I will tell you that. I will come and advocate with you. I'll be on the phone with that. I have no problem with that, because I will ask the questions. I will tell you the questions to ask. Okay. So, but you have to do that so you have a peace of mind every day, despite my, trying to just get my head around what was happening to me, because they still hadn't said sepsis yet. They still hadn't said that, because I was in that 3-week coma. So, I'm waking up. What have you done to me? And they still hadn't said that to me, because like I said, what have you done to me? What happened? And, later on, I was able to see it in the progress note. Now we got portals now. You have patient portals now. You need to sign in, do your password, go in there. You got all your test results. They're right there. And it'll say abnormal. It'll say red. It'll say borderline yellow, caution. Some of that you can read, because you'll see your prior number and you either went up or you went down. Some of that, you just got to sit tight, copy it, print it out and go over and say, okay. And then put a question mark and take that in with you to your doctor's appointment and say, I got some questions. Can we go back to the lab work? Okay, sure. They have no choice, or they lose a patient. Done. And we write results. We write evaluations. And I'll tell people something. Don't send me, they'll be kind of cocky and they'll throw off. I said, just don't send me an evaluation. They're like, oh, wait, yeah, don't send me. If no one could go with you, for sure, record the conversation and go back over it with your trusted people and talk it over with the team on the next visit. There you go, Misty. You're doing our job for us, Misty. I think you're a social worker underneath there. I think you are. Anyway, but yeah, thank you. Okay, Ms. Horn, is there anything else because we got a varied age group that listens. So, and I love our children. I love our youth, because they take the questions, they'll take the conversation back to their parents. And so is there a prevention piece out there? Is there something we can say to anybody who right now, you don't have those issues? You don't have diabetes in the family. You've not stepped on a nail. You've not been hit by a car. You don't have any trauma going through, something pending. But if something happens, of course, depending on what it is or was, where do we go from here now?
Yeah.
Where do we go from here?
Yeah. So I think that's a really good. Yeah. Sorry.
Go ahead, Trey.
No, go ahead. No, what I was mentioning, because we're coming up on hurricane season. And I wanted to, we're coming up on hurricane season, and I've seen where places have maybe flooded areas and people are walking through the water. And so I wanted to bring that up, so maybe Michaela can touch on that as well. You don't know what you're walking in, you don't know what you're walking on. So just, that's something I thought of. I'm sorry.
No, yeah, definitely. So to that point, there's actually a couple risk factors involved in that. And let's talk about a healthy individual, right? No pre-existing conditions. The biggest fear is the people who are trapped in water, or places where even the water is, let's say, just past the toes, just past the toe line. It will hit the point where it is so moist, your base skin layer will start to kind of separate, like we get a blister. The problem with that is our skin is the most amazing protective organ. It's the biggest organ we have. If you don't know, your skin's an organ. That's a fun one for the kids. It's the biggest organ on your body, right? And it protects. It's the best part of your immune system. Unfortunately, when that breach happens, which a lot of our patients is what we deal with, a breach. When that breach happens, the body's very good, as Ms. Gray spoke about, healing itself in the right conditions, right? We keep it in these moist conditions. We keep it in dirty waters and dirty bacterial conditions. To your point of, it could be something very small, some branch or bit of debris, or, you really do never know what's kind of floating in those darker areas, or how deep the water is, et cetera. You could scrape yourself. For one of my patients, my goodness, I joke about that. They could just scrape themselves, right? And because of the lower immune system, the infection can be unfortunately very bad very quick. And we always hope that it's not, and we try to jump on it. I mean, we are people who will literally take a text message over the weekend and prescribe antibiotics because we're like, oh my goodness, no, you're right. This is a problem. Let's go ahead and jump on it right now. So I think early prevention is very important. As somebody who, you know, I'm healthy and I'm very blessed and thank the Lord, but definitely go to the doctor regularly. That's something I neglected a lot in my youth. And that was with a father who had type 1 diabetes, right? So definitely if you have history in your family, you know, advocate for yourself. I know that there are some tests and scans and things that get added to your blood work only at a certain age, but guess what? You can advocate for it. You can say, hey, I want the full panel. And when they're like, what do you mean by that? Tell the doctor, well, what do you mean? What is the most I can have done? I want every single thing tested that my insurance is willing to test me for. Right. And if you feel like there's a concern outside of that, then ask for that too. See what the price is. You'd be surprised sometimes. But I think nothing is worth your peace of mind. Right. So, you know, doing that research, asking those questions, and, you know, to your point of the flooding, being aware of your surroundings. And I hate saying the word common sense because some of this is not a choice, right? We talk about people whose homes are flooded. And I think sometimes when we think about floodwaters and injuries that go with that, we're thinking of the people out there in their kayaks, you know, screwing around in the streets. But the reality is the injuries can happen very likely in the homes too. And, you know, I think the biggest thing for me, and hate to be that lame person, is get out of the house. All the things in the house are replaceable. You're not replaceable. If you are financially able to, if you have a friend, if they can make it to a shelter, you know, get to a place that's safe. I think that's always a big thing for me.
I can tell people to be careful in the snow cold. Many people go to play and ski in the winter weathers, but they are not used to that kind of cold, and they have issues not knowing how to prep for the type of cold that they have never been accustomed to. Very good, Charles. Very good.
The results of
our
loss as
Florida,
well.
our Florida winter clothing is nothing. We can't even go to Georgia. Even to go to Virginia in the cold, that's nothing. You got to go to those states and buy your clothes there, because our little sweaters, they're very thin and all that kind of stuff. They do nothing. They barely keep us warm, and we're in layers here in Florida. So that was a great point, Charles. Thank you for that. And you know, and we've got critters now. We've got critters just showing up from nowhere. Mixed breed stuff. When I was here and I went over to a city called Castleberry to meet with a colleague of mine, and there's this big thing, and I'm like, what the devil is that? And he was about this long, but he was different colors. I said, I know that can't be a grasshopper. I've only seen green grasshoppers. I've never even seen a brown one, but this was multicolored. And I'm like, wow. So, you know, you're stepping on stuff, and, you know, kids out there, red alert, do not be picking up animals and rodents and stuff like that. You don't know what they're carrying. And don't just go up to a dog even. You don't know if they've been vaccinated. They've had their shots and stuff. Now, that's one creature that has to have shots. Okay, that's one. All right, you don't go and be trying to put pull their tail or whatever. You don't know if they've been well kept. You've got to just take precaution. You don't. I'm not saying become a prisoner and all of a sudden, oh my God, I'm scared. This is not fear. This show is not to instill fear. It's to alert you. It's to make you aware, and it's to make yourself accountable. You've got to hold yourself accountable.
And to your point on the animals, let me tell you as well, Miss Gray, you are so correct. I cannot tell you how many patients came in with the misnomer of, well, dogs' mouths are cleaner than humans, right? And What I'd like to always express to people that we tend to forget, and this is going to go with a couple scenarios I'm going to give you.
Okay.
Animals carry different bacteria than we do, right? They're different species, things like that. When that bacteria gets into our body, it doesn't know what to do with it. It's something that's a brand new infection, and those are the ones that become so severe so quickly, whether you are a healthy individual, and then God forbid if you are someone who is compromised, right? My other favorite point to that is pools, right? I can't tell you how many of my patients with a wound are like, I can't get in the pool. It has all this chlorine. I can't get in my tub. I cleaned it with bleach. And what I like to express to them is, my microbiology class, what we would learn is, in those environments where bleach has killed everything, there are other bacteria that are still surviving. So think about that. In a pool that's fully chlorinated, in a tub, a shower that you've completely cleaned down, there is bacteria, and it's the bacteria that survived, that 0.01%, if you will, on the bottle, that survived, and that is the bacteria that you do not want to be infected with. And so unfortunately, that means we do have to sacrifice parts of our life. So you talk about, unfortunately, we're talking prevention to limb loss. following your protocols. I have so many patients that are non-compliant, and I'll be honest, Miss Gray was never that patient, not to toot your horn, but she was always very wonderful and goal oriented on, I want to be better. And whatever way that means, physically, spiritually, mentally, right? I want to be in the right place. And unfortunately, that's not always the case. I have patients, that'll ask me why their wounds aren't healing and then tell me they just did a full day at Disney and didn't want to use a scooter, because it's not for them. I'm like, it is though. Unfortunately, now is the time. I know you're a martyr and you want to give it up to everybody else, but get on the scooter, right? So, being willing to listen to those protocols and make little sacrifices now. I know, like we talk about diabetes, it stinks to have to go to diet sodas or to go to, reduce sugar this, keto that, but you start to make those small adjustments and you'll find you might really like this brand's, keto bread. And you come to find that this alternative of how you cook, your breakfast isn't that bad because you're just leaving out the toast or the potatoes or, whatever it is, right? And I'm a big fan of finding exchanges. I'm someone who diets and exercises as well, right? Find changes in your life that you can stick to because you actually enjoy it, because it was something where instead of saying I can't have anything, I can have a little bit of something, right? Because imagine that's your only other alternative. If you're trying to live that healthy lifestyle is nothing. And I encourage you to find a balance because I promise you can. It doesn't have to be all or nothing. There's definitely a middle ground and good days and bad days,
Man, thank you so much for that. This is why, we're honoring and recognizing and acknowledging limb loss and limb difference, because there are people who are born with no limbs. They still have to be extra, it still got to be as careful, even though they were born with this situation, they still got to maintain so it won't get any worse. But please, if a service animal comes up to you without an owner, please get more people and follow the service animal. It may lead you to the owner who may need help, but never follow and think without another person. Be safe. Thank you, Misty. See, I love my audience. I love our audience. They are so awesome. And they think about these things because normally nobody's going to think about that. Nobody's going to say that, but yeah, we got to be very careful and you got to keep your head on a swivel. That's all you have to do. At the same time, you've got to put your self-care techniques and protocols in place as well. So what do I do? What do I enjoy doing? Okay, I'm not able to do this right now. And that's one thing in this world of amputeeism, we've all been able to say, once we have some time, because we have to have time, you can't rush us into things. But once we've had time, we can say, you know what? I think, you know what, I'm going to do that. And sometimes most of the things I've reacquired that I didn't have to relearn, I wasn't thinking about like, okay, today I got to be able to put my earrings on. I wasn't doing that. It's just like, oh, you know what? I can't wait for the kids to get up. And it was a hoop earring, with a little hook. And I did it. I was like, oh, I did it. I put my earrings on, and we have those small celebrations, because I did it. I didn't have to ask for help. I got up the other morning. Everybody, my daughter was at school and my baby just came in from overnight work. And I think my other son had stepped out or he was snoring. He was asleep. I said, I'm hungry. I can go in there because Miss K has put things in Tupperware and stuff like that, meal portion stuff. So I said, oh, I could get this very carefully because my dog is sitting there waiting for the scraps just to fall. That's what she does to me. She just like, I'm just waiting. I know something's you're gonna miss something. I'm gonna get it, So I said, go out the kitchen, get out of the kitchen, and I just took my time. Later on, okay. Had a young both amputated this weekend. Oh wow, Elder K, that's out of Tennessee. Oh my gosh. Okay. Well, if he needs support, I don't know how old he is, but if he needs someone to talk to, give him my number. Let me walk him through this because that's a throwback right there. I know I can't see my life. I can't even see my life, and what life could be like. So I'll be more than happy to take some time and talk to him, when he's ready. I don't know how old he is. I think she says he was 16.
16,
Did she say 15? Yeah. So if he needs somebody, if he's ready, when he's ready, now he has to be ready. He can't force us. We got to be ready to hear the conversation. I know my prosthetic company, my technician was like, okay, hey, Miss Gray, I think you'd be this. I said, no, hang on, just hang on. I'm not walking around with hooks. I'm not doing that. I'm not doing it because I'll pinch myself and then I'll be mad at you and won't talk to you anymore. But I had a great team because they're like, okay, Miss Grace says no. They knew when they know when to push me and they know when to back off. And they do it so they don't have to back off because they're like, hey, Miss Grace, I was thinking, especially Miss Horn, I was thinking, so what are you doing with this? How are you doing this? And and I love her for it because it's like, I didn't think about that. Or, what I'm doing is this. There you go. and they celebrate you. They celebrate your wins and everything. But anyway, we got less than a minute to go. Any last words here? Any last words out in the audience? Anything? This is great. This is great. And thank you so much. Dr. Luttrell will look out for you. This is pay. She's working for 50 minutes extra. So please make sure that the paycheck reflects that. Okay.
You know, it's actually his birthday tomorrow.
Really?
Yes. We'll
Okay. Today's show provided much information. Good things, ladies. Oh, thank you. Okay. So tomorrow. Okay. And tomorrow's a Tuesday in office. Okay. I got to surprise him. Woohoo. Well, thank you so much. That's our time. We'll see you next week. Same time, same station. Night, night, y'all. Thank you, Ms. Horn.